visual representations, such as paint a verbal picture of the current environment, and then showing the transition to a more ideal scenario.
Okay, so mark out the visual words. So scenario.
Exactly. Automating the point of sale.
Say it again.
The automating the point of sale. In other words, through automation of the point of sale, this is the better scenario
Oh, yes.
than the current environment area. And this painting is a visual picture with the client showing here now what it would be like, sort of future facing into a new, more ideal scenario with total automation, more control, more enhanced picture for him. Very visual. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm utilizing it right now. And one way I saw I could improve that, I could use more kinesthetic predicates to allow my customer to feel more involved in the presentation.
Very good. And also, what other things? I mean, you could also fit in auditory too, making sure that you're kind of getting those three in as much as you can.
Right.
Because it's possible a person may be auditory and not visual or kinesthetic, and be kind of waiting to hear what it is that you mentioned about what I can do.
Exactly.
What it would sound like.
A good example of that would be?
Using those auditory predicates. After we've talked about, the benefits of this system, I'm wondering how this sounds at the moment, as far as your sense of does this meet your needs? Is this meeting your needs? So you've used auditory predicates to pace the person. That's auditory.
The other portion I put is making calls, the actual physical going out making calls. We've now come up with a new order for this. It's called fresh call. Okay. Even though I enjoy the work, there's a defined inhibition to the actual starting of the procedure, the process.
So Dave has inhibition about making calls. Dave's a salesperson selling cash register systems and things, and so he's had some inhibition about actually going out and making these calls. Okay.
I imagine I visualize rejection.
This is how you get inhibited?
Right. I'm trying to sort out the inhibitions. To correct and enhance this pattern, I can remember occasions when I have had very successful first visits that have concluded with the sale. Utilizing these past positive experiences by recalling them in detail, visual, kinesthetic, etc., and anchoring them, I will have a fantastically positive resource, always available as I'm meeting new customers instead of prospects looking to a lot of viewers qualify always.
Okay, excellent. So actually what Dave really did was he really changed his strategy. He used the same senses but just fitted other things into the pictures that was leading more to kinesthetic positive feelings about things rather than kinesthetic negative feelings. Excellent. Okay, very good.
Yeah, really good.
Okay.
I'd like to do mine now because I elicited a strategy from Dave.
Okay.
And it was a strategy about a new plan that he has, which is eating lighter, going towards feeling lighter. And the first thing he did when he was going to tell me about how he was going to start developing new eating habits, the very first thing he did was he went down like this. And he just was like really inside for a minute. And it even looked like he swallowed a little bit like what he's tasting this new dishes he's eating. And then he said, he looked up, over there.
Visual memory.
Visual memory. And he said, yeah, I decided I'm going to stop eating lunches. And he said, I feel lighter when I realize I don't need to eat lunch. I'm feeling lighter. That's kinesthetic. And don't really miss eating lunches. When I get home in the evening, I feel fine.
If you can hold it right there.
Yeah.
Okay, now David said that he doesn't miss eating lunch.
So miss eating lunches is definitely there.
Absolutely.
And I asked him that.
It's about missing. I mean, it's not about fine.
Yeah.
Going right through the day and eating at the end of the day.
And I asked him, how do you feel when you get home in the evening? Do you feel deprived from not having lunch? Because I picked up that he missed eating lunch a little bit. He said, I eat the same amount. I feel, okay about that. And so then we went on, and I said, well, what's your new incentive for doing this? And he said, well, he's really he has a new picture now of being leaner and visual construct, and that he feels more comfortable. And I couldn't tell if he actually had the feeling already, he'd experienced it, but he's imagining, or else he already does know that when he's lighter, he feels more comfortable. He said, I feel more comfortable, my body feels better. And then he said, and I've been seeing you and John as models for the way y'all eat, and you're lightweight and lighter. He kept using the words lighter, leaner, and comfortable. And then he said he knows that he had a strategy of moving away from, losing weight, and now he's putting in a new piece there that he wants to go towards the possibility of being healthier.
Okay, so one thing here is people generally don't like to lose something, right?
Yeah.
So actually one day, Greg, who lives with us in New York, he manages one of the largest diet center in New York City. I hear him on the phone, and he's talking to a client. He says, did you lose? And we didn't have any idea what he was talking about, but he was asking about his client. Did his client lose? And anyway, they were quite excited about how much this person had lost. It was just very funny, actually. But anyway, we talked a little about it, and people generally don't like to lose. Actually, it's kind of, on one level, they know what that's about, actually gaining a lighter physiology, going more toward an optimal physiology. Anyway, so as a change agent, a good idea to be sensitive to that people generally do like to move towards something rather than be moving away, because then you get to know the person's dissociated somewhat rather than being associated to something else.
So what I picked up in the strategy, if I were going to notate it, it would be KV, visual construct. There was auditory in there. I sensed that he was coaching himself and saying, you can skip lunch today. It's like and yet, in retrospect, I look back and there wasn't a lot of auditory in there. It probably could be a little bit more. And then, so I think the first strategy is KVAK. And I think that's still a good strategy in terms of the senses that he's using. I think it's to fit in the pieces of going towards something. And if you are missing lunch, we talked about what could he do at lunch that he wouldn't be missing something, that it might be to take that time to go for a walk. To do something to feel like there's something that he is doing, that he's nurturing himself, not feeling that he's depriving himself during lunch.
Okay, well, you see, now all this has to really be congruent with how you sense David is. And so the first thing is that probably he gains energy as a result of having something. In fact,
well, he said that. He said that he gained energy.
So I would think that's very important that he does have something in that part of the day that really does give him energy to be awake in the afternoon and really give his brain and heart energy. So then I might suggest, well, how about really having fruit or having some cereal or something like that actually during lunch, or I'll find out what he has been eating, and if there's something that you can fit a little bit more complex carbohydrates in, or he can have a fruit lunch, or he eats light. That's okay, because there's no need to do something drastic with Dave, because it's not that all of a sudden he's becoming a blimp.
He's becoming lean.
But that David really, if it's probably more or less been the same weight for a while, or there may be a little bit of incremental gain. So we know that he's not eating a lot more than he needs. So he only needs to cut down just a tiny bit. So then I would say to him, is there something that you are eating at the moment that you feel has got a little bit too much fat in it, or is there a way that you could take a portion of that fat so that you're eating a little less fat? Something like that.
Okay, and in terms of the strategy, I would say the strategy basically that you have is KV, KV, KV. Right now, it's KV, KV. So how do we put more auditory in there also? What I thought of is that the internal coaching, congratulations strategy. But what's that piece in there when a person doesn't seem to have as much auditory? Like they're just skipping over that, or is it occurring and it's...
Well, the first thing is that we want to fit this strategy into a strategy that Dave currently uses.
The KV, KV.
Well, now it may be visual, kinesthetic, auditory, possibly it's visual, kinesthetic, auditory. In other words, everything that Dave does that he's conscious of somewhat is going through the visual,
right,
then kinesthetic, then auditory. If you want to pace something to be more unconscious, so that he's not actually having to think about it, then you would fit something into those other senses, kinesthetic or auditory. Fitting it into vision is something that he's going to be conscious of. So it may be a conscious strategy that he needs, or it may be an unconscious strategy. So I certainly would wire something into the strategy that he's already using.
Yeah.
See, now we're at the moment talking mostly about meta programs involving a sequence of senses elicited. However, there's also the meta program of how the whole strategy works, that we need to be getting into as well with things. So I'll figure out, first of all, how can David go towards more of an ideal physiology? It may be something that's not so much drastically done, but something that happens over the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months or more, as both Dave and Terry focus on what it is that they're eating and develop patterns, in fact, that of food that they're loving, that food that's really excellently blessing, the temple of your body, and that you're imagining being creative a little and being quite excited about new dishes and things, and not so much having great variety, but finding few dishes that you love to cook that are really excellent dishes, and then more or less having those dishes make a base for things. We fare much better actually when we have a base of something happening regularly than the wife or the person in the house who is doing the cooking, always having to think, like, God, what can I cook now to kind of do something a little different, and so Mum or whoever it is that's doing the cooking, it's got this added burden trying to figure out other things, and so then it slips back into the old way. So then I would be wanting to figure out a way that something could be easily done. And like Catherine, who came here last night to do the Sufi dancing, this is exactly something that's happened to her a little just recently.
That's funny.
She's wanted to please everybody. She's thinking about this dish to make it, that dish to make it, all of it, and she's starting to get a little frazzled. And but she's realising when she asks everybody, well, what is it that you love? And they say, I really love that stir fry that you did. Now the stir fry is something she does all the time at home. So what we suggested to her was that we thought that possibly there should be a scrumptious meal that she does do regularly, more or less, and that she has a couple of varieties of this, that she does some things more or less that's regular. We've grown up to have this strategy much more than eating all this variety of stuff.
So David, when you were saying, okay, find the strategy, then find the meta model or the big picture, and then you said something about to begin to find the strategy that's running. Is it what's running? I missed that piece. Something about...
Yeah, so what is the current way that Dave makes decisions about things?
The decision.
Because we would be wanting to sure to fit it into that strategy.
So it's the decision-making strategy.
Yes.
Find that piece.
So then I would say, Dave, the last time you bought your car, and he really is loving having bought the car, that there's been success in the buying process, and I ask him, how did he go about doing that? And he tells me what his strategy is totally for buying that car. Now I might ask him, how did he make a decision about something else? And I'm totally tuning into how he's using his senses. So then I'll be sure to get the pattern of that and fit that pattern into what it is that now he's going to be doing during the day, as far as going more towards his ideal physiology. And I always am thinking, what is congruent here? Because it's no use altering something that's really had a major benefit unless there's a way totally to take care of the underlying things, in fact.
Okay. So as a decision-making strategy, we can go and look at anything. You can look at the motivation strategy, the decision-making strategy, and then you just find that strategy, and then when you need that particular...
Let's just say that really is motivated, and all you need to do is to fit in the strategy with his sensory-specific strategy. Or it's possible, Jenny, that you do need to elicit motivation. So then you ask David, when was the last time you were kind of feeling like, oh, I don't know whether I can do this, and then you did it, and you really did it well, and when you look back and go, boy, I really did that. And then you find out how did he get motivated to be successful in that moment in something that he thought was a little sticky, and then he breezed through it. So that we've got to become flexible, and totally you are working with the person, and you're eliciting past strategies that are going to be appropriately fitted in, for him to be successful, in moving towards ideal physiology. Another thing that I would check out with Dave is I would say, how much do you feel that you need to lose as far as fat weight is concerned? Because I would want to check out totally, because he's very healthy at the moment, and he could live to a ripe old age the way he is, and it's possible that he could lose some weight, but I would say not a lot, maybe 4-5 pounds, maybe, of fat weight.
25 pounds.
Well, he could lose more, but you see, now that's really quite a lot, isn't it?
You make a big change in your whole...
So now that I'm thinking this, is that something that's easy to do? And is it easy first to lose 5 pounds and then decide that you would enjoy losing another? Because you've been successful losing this 5, I can do the same thing to lose another 5. But actually, who said this before? Tony talked about chunk pieces, doing something in a chunk. And so that's a good idea to make sure you're doing that in a chunk. Check out with the person what they're thinking about doing and find out if that's realistic.
From your familiarity with this, is there some motivation strategy that you've run across that people have that you could say kind of is a universal good motivation strategy? Is there one that you...
For weight loss, you mean?
Or for anything motivation?
Yes, I would be sure, in hearing Dave's motivation strategy, that it actually was motivation and not some external generator, right? Like, for instance, I'm going to run because I want to get thin. Now, that's not motivation. That's movement. That movement, that I may be able to get thin this way, and as soon as I've got thin, that's the end of jogging. Whereas if I were jogging truly because I sensed that I was loving this, that there's something when I feel I was achieving something about jogging, and that it had also this secondary other consequence about it, that I'm also gaining a physiology inside which allows me to deal with that much more efficiently than somebody who, like, a little more sedentary.
I've had strategies for dieting before. We've been very...
Got to get back to this.
Motivation.
Can you hang on to that just for a second so we can just finish this? Okay, so it would be sure to involve these 4 things. There would need to be a way that the person senses that they're achieving something. There would be a need to see in this strategy where that David felt that he was being able to be recognised in this process. So in other words, if he's got more of an ideal physiology, it's possible that he feels inside himself there's some recognition about himself that comes as a result of that. Also that, in recognition again, that he's recognising his ability to go from one place to another and to be successful. So achievement was the first thing. is there some form of recognition in this whole thing that he's doing? Is there a feeling that he's actually growing in the process of this?
Okay, yeah. And learning.
And is there something, in fact, that he feels that he's learning? If any of those things are there, it's more likely then that there's actual motivator, something intrinsically motivating David to go towards his ideal physiology.
So the experience itself has these intrinsic to it. It's not that you do this for that. I mean, you don't like run to be thin, because then you're saying, I do this for that. What you really have is an intrinsic feeling of learning, recognition, achievement, and growing,
Yes,
and
because,
running.
yes, because
Inside the experience
running to
itself.
get thin is running because of some physiological need.
It's a secondary.
And a physiological need always has a built-in escalating zero. What David earned 3 years ago,
Intrinsic.
might not quite satisfy
Right.
what he's feeling his needs are today. Physiological needs always have a built-in escalating zero, whereas learning doesn't.
Okay.
The same thing that Dave feels he's learning, right? This can be happening all the way through life, and it's always something coming from inside. Dave doesn't require anything to be on the outside.
With dieting too, whenever I think that I'd like to, whatever, shed a pound or two, the thing that I always think about my diet is that I'm going to add things to it, like I'm going to eat, either 2 or 3 pieces of raw fruits or vegetables every day. I just don't have room for other things because I've already eaten that raw fruit and vegetable kind of additionally. Or else I say, I'm going to drink 3 more glasses of water a day too. And adding that to my diet kind of, instead of saying, I'm going to take off this, take out that, it's always that I'm adding something really good.
That's much more congruent, isn't it? People like to be eating that. People don't like to not be.
Yeah, instead of standing there looking at the cheese and going, I wanted to eat that, instead I'm like eating a big piece of fruit, and feeling really good about eating it because it's part of the diet that I'm choosing.
That's why so
Okay, so all of these are about larger meta programs.
You don't need to smart.
Okay, about the total strategy, how something
That's
works.
the experience.
All right. Anything else, Jen?
No, that's the pieces that I was looking for. Thank you.
Okay. All right, who's next? Who's left to go?
I'll be next. I did an induction with a client. A little bit of her story is that she has, when I was working with her on the table near the end of the massage, when she turned over and she had this draining of congestion in her nose and sinuses, she told me she was having currently an infection, a sinus infection. And then she started telling me about how this concerned her because she was taking antibiotics at the time to control the infection. And in about a week or 2, somewhere in there, she was going to have an operation. And she was very concerned about complications from the surgery of an infection because when she had her baby, or both her children, she had C-sections, and she became very ill because she had infections after the C-sections, and she just didn't heal quickly. She just felt really sick and said she was really ill. So I just started talking to her about while she was in this relaxed state on the table. I just continued talking to her, and I started started saying things like how she might think of herself now and consider how this complication, this thing in the wheelbarrow, this complication is a thing of the past, and that was like a couple of years ago, and since then her body's gone through lots of changes. For example, the way you are taking care of yourself, getting massages and taking art classes for stress reduction, and how she really enjoyed her art classes, how much she was actually doing for herself. Life is really different for her now than it was a couple of years ago.
Can you pause just there for a second? I say something. This is wonderful language. That's amazing that a physician can be working with somebody and have the ability to have words that are like gold for the person. Isn't that a wonderful thing that you can go to somebody and they can use their language to enable the helping of a movement through something? You know, I've heard like several times you marking out things for her to hear, that in the past, putting this thing in the past, talking about this not as something which is a word she used, but a complication, and seemingly, like with that word that you use, kind of putting it outside herself. This is what a shaman is doing, or someone actually who's working with someone to move through something. Literally, they're putting this thing outside, and they're allowing the person to remain inside. And you have shared some things already with her that's about her immune system being primed, and the things that she's been doing since then that's truly about her immune system being primed. Okay.
I gave one of the other things I said to her in the time was using an analogy, or just I said something about your immune system. Something like your body is like a tree, and the sap runs all the way up to the top of the tree and nourishes the tree that way, just as your body, your immune system works.
Okay, so now this is a reminder of her sexual energy, because actually what's coming from this, the ground up, is this Kundalini energy, which is that pro-abdominal cord, basically. Yes, so it's reminding her of that.
Then I did another one, continued that frame, well, in a different frame of the artwork she's doing. I said, I got into it, but I said, another example perhaps was, in your artwork, you take a canvas that's finished, and it's very easy to change that and just paint over it again. That image you had there before, you can paint over it with your brush strokes up and down, back and forth, strokes to make a new image reflect yourself in a different way.
Excellent. Excellent. And actually it wasn't very good to use the word finished, more or less, that he was using his words to close his chapter somewhat, put it in the past actually. Or the likelihood that this would occur as a result of hearing the language of it, it's more likely that it would occur.
And part of my intention there was a future pacer. When she goes, whenever she's painting in the future, she may recall that. Her action, her analog, will bring back this picture, this image, well, bring back this feeling for her that she is renewing herself.
Yeah, very good.
Excellent.
Also, when she gets out of the operation, to imagine herself painting would probably boost her immune system.
Yeah.
Just to think about it. If they measured it, it would show white cells increase, just by thinking about it.
Yeah, sure. Well, we didn't get much into senses or anything like that, and I think this really was excellent, because it was a major meta program of using metaphor to weave a structure for someone to move them through something. That was very good, Ken. Excellent. Okay. Another thing that you can be doing is, when you're with the client, figure out a little bit, what is this person's primary representational system? You used visual predicates and something that she's involving vision quite a bit. I dare say she probably is somewhat a visual person if she's a painter. So, you were intuitively using those senses that are hers anyway, probably.
Yeah, when she was talking about her story, it was like she saw herself in the hospital bed. She had all this memory of seeing how it looked to her, rather than how it felt.
Okay, the other thing that Ken thought of was the future pace. He used painting because he knew that this would be a way to future pace the feelings and the resourcefulness that were being anchored. Okay, very good, mate.
Anyway, I did talk to her yesterday, and she said she went through the surgery and came out fine. She went through it really well. And she gave me feedback that all this talking to her had really helped. And,
very good.
She really changed. She said she noticed she had started thinking about it in a new way. She had gone more on a positive vein of thinking about the operation beforehand, to think about it in a positive way.
I think this is also a really elegant example of what we were talking about before, of like how do you keep the conscious mind occupied while you're spinning something for the unconscious mind. So the framework of painting, while you're able to talk about a finished piece, moving back and forth, all sorts of hypnotic induction there. It's really elegant.
And excellent, because it's for the mind to understand is the conscious mind has got to figure out what the metaphor is the meaning of. So that's another way of occupying the conscious mind. Okay. All right. Let's move on now. Good, Ken. Excellent. I'm amazed. Really, that's wonderful. A couple of people have really surprised me incredibly with their understanding. Tanya's been one really, you surprised me yesterday with your ability just acutely observing stuff that occurred. Terry and her, everything that you noticed about the people that you were working with yesterday and today. So I'm really feeling excellent about the quality of understanding that's starting to occur. Okay, who's next?
I haven't been on.
Okay, who's somebody who hasn't used their voice much this morning? Use your voice a little bit to be with the person in the presentation who said something that you're interested in marking out.
I think just from listening, the strategy one.
Yeah, the strategy.
Okay, I could
Listen
talk
to
about
strategy.
one of my strategies. When I have a client come in, one of my strategies.
Okay, Dee's a midwife. Okay, it's for everybody that's listening.
And one of my strategies is to first make them feel comfortable. And so we talk about things that are going on in their life. And if it's an initial visit, usually I'll bring out ways of how we're similar to each other and how things that we've got in common. And as I get to know them throughout the visits, later on in a visit, after I know them well and they're feeling comfortable that day, and we'll be talking about the birth, and sometimes some fears will come up that they're feeling about what might happen. And so we talk about that. We talk about something that they could do, or a different way they could look at it or feel about it, that they would feel at ease or prevent that from happening in the first place. And so this last birth is another one where we did that kind of work prenatally. Their previous birth had had a lot of blood in it. The father was just real descriptive about there's blood everywhere, he said. And that was their fears, that she would hemorrhage. And he talked about there being blood all over the doctor and all over him and all over filling the bucket and all over the walls and stuff, and was really descriptive about that.
And sure enough, this led a little bit more to be blood everywhere, kind of did it, or what?
Pardon?
Did it lead to this somewhat?
Well, that was their previous birth. So
okay.
we wanted to make this birth different.
Really? Yeah.
And we didn't want that. So we talked about ways
Very good, Dee.
that she could not have all that blood and different things that she could do. And there were certainly things that happened with the other birth
Yeah.
that could have been handled differently. And one of the things, I think the main thing that she did different was just letting the placenta come out on its own. With the previous birth, the obstetrician had yanked it out, and big chunks were left in. He had to keep reaching in and out to get all these pieces and chunks.
Yeah.
And so, with this birth, she just let the placenta plop out. There wasn't even any guiding it out or anything like that. She just went to the toilet and totally did it on her own.
Yeah.
There was no bleeding at all. And another thing that she had done that she felt, I knew by her enthusiasm in drinking this herb tea that was high in vitamin K,
Yeah.
that she was feeling that this would really make a difference too. It would help the clotting factor, and so she was really drinking this herb tea and feeling really good that she wasn't going to bleed, and there was hardly a drop of blood at this birth.
Yeah. Well, you know something, Dee really was doing quite a bit of reframing. She was figuring out what is this person's unconscious fears about the birth, what is it that happened in the past, because she's really wanting to reframe this in a way that the experience is something that's comfortable and really is something that's going to work. I heard the pacing. First of all, I heard Dee really involved in the visiting frame, and that she kept that visiting frame the whole time, and that she was pacing this person. She was sensing that she was like this other person, so there was a pacing that was occurring. And so finally, when she paced, then she led into what are the unconscious fears that this person has about the process, leading from what happened in the past, more or less, and what she's feeling she'd like to be doing, knowing absolutely the effect of Dee's words on this woman and her own words, how much this affects our physiology quite incredibly. One thing that I wanted to ask Dee, at some point Dee used to spend, or went through a little bit of a period of time where she was spending hours and hours in the process, and I was wondering, at one point we said to Dee, well, I wonder, maybe you should just call up and just say, when you get to 6 or 7 centimetres, let us know and then we'll come over, or something. Whether or not, is this something that you are sensing inside yourself, so that it's not that when you're going to a birth now it's like going on for like quite some time, but that you're going in it's like a little bit more timely.
Well, I think that earlier this year there were some births that were long, but I never thought of that as a pattern.
Okay.
It's something that was happening earlier this year, because in the past I had actually noticed that a lot of births happened real swift, and
Yes, okay.
there were
So
some
your
others
pattern,
this
your
year.
overall pattern, what you expect does set things up, presupposes that there will be something that occurs, so that a midwife certainly who is sensing that this is an easy process, this is something that can occur within a time frame more or less, mostly that's going to help the process of being that way, actually, being observant of that.
Did she see any pictures of other births?
Pictures?
I was just wondering, was somebody that had such a visual memory of their birth being had so much blood, that if you had showed her like a video of another birth where there wasn't, so she could have like a visual picture that was not the norm, or a picture just...
It's like, having to get all this equipment to explain something to somebody that's
It's
just...
exactly what he did, though.
Yeah, I was
He
just
painted her a picture that was very...
Yeah, often I do give them video.
Yeah, I wondered if she'd given her
But
one.
they didn't have a VCR. So what I did was I had described my birth, how there was not a single drop of blood. And I think that
Gave her another picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I sensed, that somewhere this lady gotten another picture. She now had 2 pictures that she
Yeah.
could look at, and then she knew that she could have this picture instead of this picture.
yeah. And it was interesting because the amount of blood she had was so minimal, it was very unusual. It was like this tiny little blotch.
Yes, so this is something you sense really has value in the things that you're doing, to speak about the process. I mean, you're doing that anyway with everyone, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, anything else with that?
Not with that particular one. I've got a lot of other... I had one client come this week that I was not successful with, and I would like to talk about that a little bit, maybe get some feedback or
Okay.
ideas. Usually I do this visiting thing to try to get these people feeling uncomfortable, and this was an initial visit, and the guy was usually the first visit takes like 3 hours, and this guy was sitting out in his van watching a little TV, and and the woman said, well, he would like to be a very big part of the birth, but he thinks maybe it's woman's business or something like that. So I just went right out and invited him in. And then, though, when he came in, he was like this. We'd sit on the floor, and he was like this, and her and I had a great rapport, and I would try to ask him questions and bring him out of being down here. When he looked up, he looked pretty clear. He did, obviously, he has a drug habit. And so, I don't know if he was on drugs right then or just some after effects from it, but he was not into the prenatal at all. He was like...
Well, it's not fair for us to say because he was in this position that he was not involved, because somebody could be right there, and boy, I tell you, they are right with everything. It's possible that, what you found was that he's a little wondering, this is his idea is that this is not part of him like it could be, or it is really part of him. This is his way. Well, we should imagine that we can totally work with somebody who, like Steve Levine, a doctor friend of mine, a physician in New York, a psychologist, told me that he had this patient that every now and then would just come in, just with a book and not care about anything, and Steve would just be shocked, this person just come in and just not even pay attention to anything and just kind of even be reading a book. Right? And he was asking me on the phone, what do I do about this? And I said, what a wonderful thing, allow that person to read, and encourage that person to read, and then, allow them to lie down and read, and then you'll just have a little bit of a chat with them while they're reading. Yes. Yeah, so everything, first of all, a sense that everything can be perfect, everything is perfect, and then whatever you see somebody doing something, that they're really excellent at what they're doing, whatever they're doing, that they're excellent at what they're doing. But anyway, it's much better, of course, when you've got the person not in a dissociated state, really, but having the ability to kind of be instrumental. Anyway, the first key that I heard from the wife was that she said that he wants to be a very big part. You see, that's an immediate flag to me. Because why is it that this person is wanting to use such a quantifier in this process, when it should be something that they're totally equal to? Why is there such a need to use a very and big part? You see, because is there something that he's thinking that he's only got a small part, now that he has to have a big part to compensate? You see, that's usually there's something behind it. The person will say, I really, really want to have a big part in this. It's possible that the person may have been feeling that might be left out.
Okay, another thing, as we were only maybe halfway through, and he looks up to his wife and says, well, I really think that we should wait and not make any rush decisions or anything like that. She was wanting to go ahead and make a commitment between us, and he was like, not wanting to rush into things. He was intimidated by how excellent it is here. He thought, well, I must be charging too much money if I was here, which isn't the case at all. And he had these things,
Yes, so when you engaged him, did you ask him, what are the kinds of considerations that you're feeling about the pregnancy and me being a midwife, being involved in this, and your decision to have me be the midwife in this, and to find out what his considerations are? It's possible that underneath everything he is thinking, well, this is usually something that's done in a hospital, and he's thinking, boy, I wonder about actually this whole process, because he's feeling that he doesn't know much about this process. And so that, there may be, he may have had considerations, which I'm sure he did. Were you able to get at those?
He really wanted things to not continue right now. He wanted to go away and then come back in a month